Hey guys, before you watch this show, just a little bit of a caveat. When we did this show, we didn't have a lot of information on the initial wellness call. We did not know at the time, and we just found out now that the wellness call, still don't know who made it, but it may have been made by someone that was either close to her, or someone that knew. But the key here is it definitely wasn't made by her. And briefly in this discussion, we talk about what about if she had remorse and she had made the phone call herself for the wellness check. Be advised, we have no reason to believe that anymore. Based on what we read, the cops were there, and then she came to the apartment, and basically that's when she discovered that the cops had, I guess, found what she had done. But with that said, the rest of the dialogue that we have in this discussion, I believe, is spot on. But just wanted to mention while we were doing this, we didn't have a lot of information on that initial wellness call. So we threw out a lot of what if scenarios just to try to keep things objective. But either way, I don't think that changes our discussion. I just wanted to make sure you have that knowledge going in so people don't try to correct it as they watch the dialogue. So please enjoy the episode and we'd love your thoughts. And as always, guys, stay safe. How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, great discussion today. We're going to talk about the Kentucky cheerleader, Laken Snelling. Okay, so basically, I'm going to break down her case shortly, but just real quick, she is a Kentucky cheerleader that unfortunately was found with a baby that was dead in her closet. And now recent updates say we have an ex-boyfriend who's given their DNA, so we're looking for the father, but we have a lot of things we're going to discuss here, including a true breakdown of what happened here in Kentucky. And my guest is going to be a mental health counselor named Denise Schonwald. So let me bring her on real quick. Hey, Denise, what's going on?
Hi, nice to see you.
Good. The pleasure's mine, Denise. And Denise has been on my show a couple of times before, guys. If you look her up, you'll see she's been on Tear Talk a few times. But Denise, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Schonwald. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I'm also a former critical care nurse. I'm licensed here in the state of Florida as well as nationally.
Yes, and it's always good having you. So, Denise, I got a little bit to read first, but I got some questions that are going to come your way. And now, guys, we try to be objective. We try not to pass judgment. So technically, maybe during today's show, we'll figure out, do we have a bad person who committed an evil act, or do we have an evil act and we're still trying to figure out who this person is? And that's why I wanted to bring on Denise Schonwald, and I'm hoping to have her on for another discussion in the future about how serial killers, stuff like that, have no sense of guilt. And we have a great dialogue in how we are going to evolve that. And I'll guarantee you it hasn't been done like this before, but we'll get to that. This one obviously has been recommended, and it's currently what people want to know more about. So real quick, let me just show you who she is. So there she is. There's Laken Snelling. So on August 27, 2025, Lexington police responded to a home in the 400 block of Park Avenue around 10:30 a.m. for reports of an unresponsive infant. They discovered a newborn baby boy hidden in a closet, wrapped in a towel inside a black trash bag. Authorities later determined the baby was born on August 27th, so it looks like that day. By August 31st, the infant's mother, 21-year-old Laken Ashley Snelling. Let me show you another picture of her, because this is the picture when she was taken into custody. But I have other pictures of her. There she is with a little bit of a social media presence. We have another one. Let me see. And this is when she came into court for her, I guess, her arraignment, when they told her what her charges would be and when she would get to do her plea. And as you can see, she looks a little all made up. But let me finish up. So by August 31st, the infant's mother, 21-year-old Laken Ashley Snelling, was arrested and charged with abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and concealing the birth of an infant. Snelling, a University of Kentucky senior and member of the school's stunt cheerleading team, so that's stunt, S-T-U-N-T, was identified as the infant's mother. She would later plead not guilty to all charges at her first court appearance on September 2nd, 2025. I want to give you some of the latest updates. So Snelling's ex-boyfriend, quarterback, Izaiah Hall. So I do have a picture of him too. So Izaiah Hall is this gentleman. That's Izaiah Hall. Voluntarily gave a DNA sample to Lexington police to determine paternity of the infant. Hall, who plays quarterback at Cumberland University in Tennessee, had dated Snelling prior to her more recent relationship with Connor Jordan. And I believe this is Connor Jordan. I believe that's him. Okay, and then I believe this is him too in these pictures here. And these pictures matter because a lot of people believe that these pictures, both of them know that that she may be pregnant, and these are the pictures that they may be taking, like maternity pictures, I'm assuming, but that hasn't been confirmed. That's just what they're talking on social media. So Connor Jordan would be the more recent relationship. Results of the DNA test are expected in the coming weeks, and that would be for him because Connor hasn't taken them yet. And I believe Connor may have also erased all his pictures of her on social media, or the pictures of them together. That's what I was being told. So again, results of the DNA tests are expected in the coming weeks. Snelling's first court hearing was on September 2nd, 2025, where she entered a not guilty plea and was released on $100,000 bond. She's now on house arrest at her parents' home in Tennessee. So remember, this happened in Kentucky, but she's now on home arrest in Tennessee, notably without an ankle monitor. And as the bond, that's one of the bond conditions, and it just simply requires her to remain at the residence and report as instructed. Now, I've been going through social media trying to see what some of the questions were. One of the questions that was asked is, she committed the crime in Kentucky. How could they go ahead and give her a bond out in Tennessee? So for the viewers, it may seem unusual that someone facing such serious charges can leave the state on bond, but courts can grant out-of-state house arrest when judges include it in the bond order, often done if family support and supervision will be stronger in the other state. In this case, Snelling was allowed to live with her parents in Tennessee as a condition of release. You also could do it if the defendant isn't deemed a flight risk and has no prior record. Snelling had no criminal history and appeared cooperative, so authorities did not require electronic GPS monitoring. And guys, so you know, she did plead not guilty, but that's usual. That's what they do, because then it opens up to negotiations later on. House arrest restrictions apply even without a bracelet. So again, she doesn't have a bracelet, but she's legally confined to her parents' home by court order, despite not wearing an ankle monitor. Any unauthorized departure would violate the bond conditions, and violations trigger immediate consequences. If Snelling breaks any release conditions, the Kentucky court can swiftly revoke her bond and issue an arrest warrant, enforceable across state lines due to the court's retained jurisdiction. Our next court appearance right now I have is a preliminary hearing scheduled for September 26, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. At that hearing, a judge will review evidence to decide if the case proceeds either to a grand jury or for indictment. Now, I got the questions coming, but I just want to do one more breakdown. It's a little bit more detailed, and then we are going to go into the questions. We got a lot here to cover, guys. So bear with me, Denise, but this is the last section. I did a lot of research, and I'm trying to cross my T's and dot my I's when it comes to doing the recaps before we give our opinion on such matters. And then, guys, if there's anything here that you can add, feel free, please do, because as you watch, as you watch, Denise, as you watch all these people posting this stuff on the internet, a lot of them will throw out all these different facts coming from these unverified sources, and you just have no idea what's real anymore. It's so frustrating, because there was one I was watching where it talked about a lot more details than we've been given. Like basically, it noted after she gave birth how she laid down with the baby, fell asleep, but it looks like it was a stillbirth. But then the baby whimpered. There's no facts behind any of that. So real quick, just a more detailed narrative here. Police officers arriving at the scene on August 27th quickly realized the situation was dire. What began as a welfare check became a criminal investigation when they found the newborn concealed in Snelling's closet. The infant was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators believe Snelling gave birth at home and then attempted to hide all evidence of the delivery. According to the arrest citation, Snelling admitted after being read her Miranda rights that she had given birth and then tried to cover it up, cleaning the area, and placing all used materials in the trash bag with the baby. But mind you, these were questions before she had the lawyer. Then when she got the lawyer, she later pled not guilty. Now, mind you, too, not guilty doesn't always mean, you didn't do what you were charged with. It just means that maybe you're not guilty because there's other circumstances that could have pressured you into doing something that shouldn't have been done. So why would someone conceal a pregnancy or birth? We noted there are several possible psychological and social pressures that could lead to such a desperate act. One, I got fear of judgment or shame. A young woman might be terrified of her family or community's reaction to an unplanned pregnancy. Pressure to maintain a reputation as a student athlete and cheerleader, or in her case, she looked like they said she wanted to be like the Barbie doll. Again, because there's glamour there. The Barbie doll is considered a very pretty depiction of a female. Snelling may have felt immense pressure to uphold a certain image in athletic or academics. And then you got denial or avoidance. Some individuals remain in denial about their pregnancy, not fully accepting the reality, which can lead to panic when the baby arrives. And then there's a lack of awareness of safe options. She may not have realized there were resources like Kentucky's safe haven law that allows infants to be safely surrendered without legal punishment. And guys, just be advised, no one knows if the baby was stillborn or not. This is assuming maybe if the baby was live and she would have murdered the baby or killed the baby. So let's see, what do I got here? So legal transition and bullets. Let's break down why prosecutors chose these specific charges instead of homicide charge. So we mentioned that there was 3 charges that she's facing right now, right? So the 3 charges are abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and concealing the birth of an infant. To be honest with you, they're not heavy charges. I think at the most, some of them carry between 1 to 5 years. And if she was ever charged with this, let's say they don't believe that she did intentionally kill the baby, maybe the baby was a stillborn. Most likely it would be done concurrent. They'd probably be ran together. But let's break down why prosecutors chose these specific charges instead of homicide charge. So for the unknown cause of death right now, with the baby's cause and manner of death still undetermined, authorities could not immediately charge homicide. Instead, they charge abuse of a corpse and tampering with evidence, which fit the provable facts, the handling of the baby's body and attempts to hide the evidence. So that's something that they could see on scene already. And that's something she even admitted to, even though unofficially. Homicide requires proof of live birth and intent. So to bring a murder or manslaughter charge, investigators need evidence the infant was born alive and then died due to criminal action. As of now, it's unclear if the baby was born alive or stillborn. Without that proof, a homicide charge isn't legally supportable. And last part is start with what can be proved. It's common for law enforcement to begin with charges that are supported by immediate evidence while awaiting forensic results. In this case, the preliminary autopsy came back inconclusive on how the infant died. Once the final autopsy or lab tests like microscopic analysis are done, the Commonwealth could upgrade charges if evidence of foul play or live birth emerges. And it's funny because a lot of people automatically assuming that because it's inconclusive, they feel that it could be that she could have killed the baby, because a lot of people are leaning on the fact that they could have probably determined if the baby was born premature, if the baby was born stillborn, if the baby was born with some deformity. So a lot of people are jumping with the inconclusive thing as saying they believe the baby could have been maybe took a breath and then unfortunately may have died. And even if the baby did take a breath and let's say died, she still didn't make an effort to try to call for help and get assistance. So they'll get her for some level of negligence there. But before we go into the actual questions, Denise, there's a lot I said there. I just wanted to get that all out of the way. Do you have anything you'd like to kind of add on before we move forward?
No, I just have some comments along the way, but if you'd like to just start talking about this, let's have some conversation back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, any comments, you could please cut me off.
There's a couple things. Obviously, I'm a psychologist, so I look at these cases a little bit differently. Regardless of how all of this came about, somebody called authorities and wanted a well check. We don't have any documentation so far that Laken called herself, but somebody made the phone call. Somebody was concerned, heard something, saw something, and asked authorities to go in and make a visit. So to me, that's a little concerning. When authorities arrived, they found the baby in a trash can, in a trash bag, with apparently, from what I've read, some chemicals or whatever she used to clean up to sort of conceal all that. That to me is very concerning. Again, college kids, young girls get pregnant. Certainly they don't know what to do. There's choices to be made. But the concern for me are not that, the circumstances are horrific, but the choices that she did make were very concerning.
Is that because it seems more like a cover-up?
Well, it seems like a cover-up. And where's the remorse? Where's the understanding that I'm in over my head? I've had a baby. I've had a stillborn. Whatever she's had, whatever the process that she tried to sort of make this all go away is just very concerning.
It's funny that you said remorse, because the show that I want to do with you in the near future is, so obviously guilt is about what someone's done, and remorse becomes the empathetic side. Once, at least for true remorse, you got to have guilt for true remorse.
Yes.
They connect. Remorse would be the empathetic side of what the result is if you feel that you've done something that you shouldn't have done. But a lot of people will say, what about shame? Well, shame doesn't always mean it's about what you've done to someone else. It could be internal. Like, now I'm going to be judged. It has nothing to do. You may not need guilt for shame. You may not even need guilt for regret. Like I may regret that I'm going to jail, but I don't have guilt for what I've done. But remorse has to have some level of guilt connected to it, correct?
Yes.
And then I like what you said, when you notice that she did all these things and she made an effort to hide the baby, then it doesn't look like there's remorse, because remorse would connect to the act and how she could have affected the well-being of that baby, how she could be responsible for what happened to that baby, fully responsible.
Yes, and responsible for what happened to her. I mean, obviously she became pregnant. She had some responsibility there. And for whatever reason, she decided not to take responsibility and to take matters into her own hands. And for me, that's very concerning.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. So I had 2 questions related to this. I have a total of 14 questions that will come your way. So out of curiosity, what psychological pressures could lead someone to hide a pregnancy and then conceal a birth?
Well, certainly it sounds like she was on the cheerleading team. I imagine, was very popular. She was with somebody. Probably the last thing on a college senior's radar is the thought of becoming pregnant. So I understand the fact that this was probably not an ideal circumstance, but as they say, pressure is a privilege, and she needs to take responsibility for what happened to her. On these college campuses, they have therapists, they have help for them if they need, if they become pregnant, they need medical attention. Everything is offered to her. It wasn't as if, that this was something she had to go through alone. It's just sad for me that she didn't make some of those choices.
And it's funny because we're stuck with I don't know if it's the way the media is putting it out there, but obviously they put to her social media, they lean on the fact that she's a cheerleader from Kentucky, the stunt team. So they're really making it kind of like she's very vain, I guess, or just vanity, if you will. So it makes us think contextually that she could have done this because the baby could have kind of been an obstacle to what she's trying to choose, that level of glamour. Because there's also some shows where they say she wanted to be the Barbie doll. And I guess Barbie doll, I guess in some people's mind is perfection, which perfection is very subjective. But with that said, that could be what some people may assume is perfection. And therefore now contextually, a lot of people connect this vision of her and then use that to filter the reason why she did what she did. But I'm not 100% behind all that, because something that you said makes sense to me, and I think it hasn't been explored. Who called for the welfare check? Because if let's say she's the one that called for the welfare check, could that change? Maybe there was something in her that wanted to turn herself in for what she did, hopefully for the right reasons. Hopefully it's because she has remorse, as opposed to feeling that eventually she would get caught. Do we have remorse here connected to guilt, or do we have if it's her that called in, am I going to call it in? Because I know eventually I'm going to get figured out. Someone's going to check this closet.
Yes. And it's my understanding that she was not the person who made the call.
Oh, okay.
And so somebody was alerted that there was a baby or a pregnancy and had concerns. So when the police showed up, obviously they're going to look around, they're going to sort of check that out. And not only do they find a baby, but they find a baby in a garbage bag with disinfectant. So this is, for Laken, this is not looking good for her.
Okay, so that makes, so now the narrative may shift towards the vein. It may shift towards the image, because at that point here, then you got discovered. And we talked about this before, admitting what you did was wrong. It shouldn't happen after you've been discovered. The right thing to do is do it in the moment.
Yes.
Okay, so I didn't know that, because I've been trying to figure out who made that call, and there's nothing there. It just says a welfare call was made. So, okay. And then in your experience, how do young people cope with the immediate crisis of being found out?
Well, certainly, as I said, becoming pregnant in college is not ideal. And although it's not a common occurrence, not, most people that go to college don't become pregnant, but it's certainly not atypical. So again, these things happen. We take responsibility. She certainly had options of certainly terminating the pregnancy early when she found out. She could have given the baby up for adoption. She had options and she had support. She just chose, for whatever reason, not to take advantage of any of them.
Yeah, and when it says found out, I still think maybe people knew, because there she is with a baby bump here. People can kind of see that. And then there was, I don't have it here, I was trying to find it, but then there's a picture of her on social media where it shows goals, and on the bottom of it shows a picture of like a mother carrying a baby or something, which makes it look like she may have planned to accept it. But again, as we get further down, they are trying to find out who the father is, because maybe that could also be a pressure. Could someone be influenced by the father on some ultimatum to say, hey, if you have this baby, we're done. Breakup's done. Your career's done, or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So we really don't know, what those pressures are. So now I got some stuff on Laken's background. So just bear with me as I read some of this off. All right. So I was able to get some information on Laken's background and just a little bit about her personality, because there was some updates recently that said she really wasn't that nice of a person. That's what's coming out right now. So Laken Snelling is a 21-year-old who was until recently a senior at the University of Kentucky. I have her studying interdisciplinary disability studies. She's been a member of University of Kentucky's competitive cheer stunt team for 3 seasons. On social media, Snelling cultivated an image of a bright, enthusiastic young woman, often posting aspirational content about life, love, and even motherhood. In fact, in a TikTok video she shared on June 25th, she listed her goals with emojis, a diamond ring, a bag of money, a family of 4, a house, and notably a mother holding a baby. Friends from her hometown of White Pine, Tennessee, recall that she participated in pageants and cheer, projecting a picture-perfect persona. Snelling graduated from Jefferson County High School in Tennessee. However, former classmates have described a starkly different side of Laken's personality. One former high school classmate labeled her a serial bully, alleging that Snelling targeted multiple peers with harassment. In one reported incident, Snelling tried to run over a classmate with her Jeep in the school parking lot. According to the classmate, this was reported through Daily Mail and Fox News, the bullying was so severe that the victim transferred schools to escape it. Now, these accounts paint a more complex picture of Snelling's temperament beneath the polished social media exterior. And in the fallout of the case becoming public, Snelling has withdrawn from the University of Kentucky. So this is now, and is no longer a member of the cheer team. University of Kentucky spokesman Jay Blanton confirmed on September 5th that Snelling voluntarily withdrew from the university and is no longer part of the stunt squad. The university moved swiftly, indicating how quickly institutions distance themselves from students facing serious criminal allegations. So both prosecution, now I like to put in an angle for both the prosecution and defense as we go through it, because eventually this will probably find its way to court. So I like to kind of say that these are things that we discussed here first. So both the prosecution and defense will likely use Snelling's background to shape the narrative in court. I figure as we discover more about who she is, this will play out into maybe defining the acts that she done, because it gets filtered by, who she is, the bully. And to be honest with you, it looks like someone that could be extremely narcissistic. Would you agree?
Yes. Not only narcissistic, but narcissism goes on a spectrum. Sort of a mild case of narcissism could be a professional athlete or somebody who's very cocky. But as narcissism goes down the spectrum, they get to the point where they don't have any empathy. Her history of being bullied, being a bullier, and being very aggressive and so forth will not look good as she goes to court, because they're looking at her reputation, at her history, and there's a lot of red flags there that are not looking good in her favor.
Yeah, and would you say narcissism, kind of like as you said, it's a spectrum? So would you say the higher you view yourself, the more people start to become objects? Just no meaning?
Yeah, power and control becomes essential. And certainly a lot of times with narcissism, a lot of times they get very powerful. She was on the cheerleading squad. She had a lot of popularity. She seemed to really incorporate social media into her reputation. But somewhere along the line, that lack of empathy is really becoming apparent when we start to really look into her history as well as to what she's being accused of now.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, if a baby's born and it has a chance to mess with her goal, her plan, or maybe being with her man, I mean, we don't know exactly what the cause is, or even if she did the kill, let's just say she did, she could justify it easily by her level of narcissism. Like, basically, I killed this child because this child was an obstacle to my future.
Yes. Yeah.
And in her mind, that would be perfectly justifiable. So if that's the case, then she would never really feel guilt for that, right?
Correct.
So therefore, no remorse.
No guilt, no remorse. Right. And that's the sort of what we distinguish as therapists between narcissism and what they call antisocial personality disorder, where they lack remorse, where they don't feel empathy. And that's something you either have or you don't. All the therapy in the world cannot cure that if they don't have it.
Right. So, and I like that we're saying that, because even though you may see the person with her head down and she feels shame, that doesn't mean she feels guilt or remorse.
No, it doesn't mean that she's not a good actress.
Good actress. I mean, right. Because basically, I think the shame is more about how she's now seen, how she's now judged. It could still base on something eternal. It has nothing to do with how she feels about what she did or how it affected somebody else, but rather the shame could just be more of how she knows she's seen.
Yes, how it affects her. And a lot of times when people who have antisocial personality disorder, they act remorseful or they act guilty, or we see them cry in front of a crowd, that's not actually true emotion. That's what they're doing to try to convince everybody that they do have remorse and they do have guilt, but they do not.
Very performative.
Yes.
So even the regret, like if it looks like, well, that person looks like they have shame or regret, even regret could be internal, because now she regrets doing it, not because she feels guilty, but because her life now is going to go through some dramatic change.
Yeah. Or that she feels like that's what she needs to do to get, all these charges dismissed. These are going to be very difficult to get overlooked, regardless of her prior history.
So the feelings, without that feeling, so if I may, without that feeling of actual guilt to bring you to true remorse, then the other things that can come out without the guilt, let's say shame or regret, are really could be filtered through selfishness.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we look for when kids, so we're looking for this narcissistic antisocial personality tendency. When little kids are young, we're looking for, as therapists, fire setting. We're looking for cruelty to animals. And, it doesn't sound like that's sort of been discovered, but certainly in her teenage years, she was not only a bully, but she was also very violent, trying to run somebody over and so forth. That sort of takes it to a different level. That's beyond teasing, and, some of that it happens in high school and so forth. But it looks like her case is a little bit severe with some of the things that she did.
Yeah. And as I said, there was another thing I read where somebody was mentioned that she was very into her looks.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, obviously, at that point, maybe vanity does paint the picture. And again, I opened it up to try to be objective. But as we have this discussion, because we never really know where this dialogue's going, you can't help but paint a picture that shows a filter that doesn't really work in her benefit. And the way you opened it up too, the hiding the body, you know, if she would have made the phone call, because I didn't know who made the phone call for the welfare check, I could be seeing her a bit differently.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, hugely different. I mean, that would fit the thing where, okay, she did a bad act, but is she a bad person? But right now, it looks like with all this stuff contextually that she committed a bad act because she is a bad person.
Yes. And it's not likely that she would put a baby in a trash can and then call for a wellness check.
Right.
You know, obviously they found it in a closet. It's, you know, it was something, it sounds like she was trying to conceal it. And
yeah, I think I agree. Like she was planning on, so the funny thing is, I was looking up when the baby was born, and it looks like from what I'm reading, the baby was born the same day as the wellness check. So I think maybe if that's the case, guys, because you got to help me out here, because this is the information I'm getting. But if that's the case, maybe what happened is I could be wrong, but maybe what happened was she tried to get away with it, think of doing something, and then she realized I'm not going to be able to get away with it. Eventually I'm going to get caught. Doesn't mean she's doing things for the right reasons, but then she may have told somebody who then went ahead and did the wellness check.
Yeah. Or neighbors are noticing that she's pregnant and all of a sudden, you know,
she's not.
And so they, you know, I mean, if I'm a neighbor, you know, I may be wondering what's happening. But what happens when you call in is you say, listen, I'm not sure. I think that there's a baby and I haven't seen it, haven't heard it. Can you go investigate? And so then, you know, law enforcement goes out and does a wellness check. But when law enforcement goes in, they're going to investigate. They're going to look around. And if there is a baby, they're going to examine the baby. If there's any concern, they're going to call Child Protective Services. I mean, this, again, is something that they need to do their due diligence. And the fact that this bag is in a closet tells me that she's trying to hide something.
Yeah, and that time frame, if the baby was born in that moment, that's definitely something that's extremely important. And then the other thing is was the baby a stillborn, or was the baby, you know, fully born, or did she kill the baby? You know, did the baby take a breath? And either way, she definitely, minimal, is probably going to have some level of negligence, because she never called to get assistance. She hid the baby instead.
True. And the autopsy is going to be very telling.
Yeah, and then I as I go through this, I like to put the angle. So we talked about her past behavior. So I said maybe later on, if it's ever used, prosecution could you know, target the negative behavior. Say prosecution could highlight those allegations of past bullying or aggressive behavior to undermine any sympathy for Snelling, pointing her as someone with a mean streak or history of rule breaking. That might counter any defense portrayal of her as innocent or overwhelmed girl. But again, that's if it gets to a point where they're allowed to bring that stuff in, because if I was the defense, I'm like, I'm not going to allow that in, because you're going to paint a bias that may not even be related to the incident in hand. She could have been this bad person, but that doesn't mean that she couldn't have gone through a stressful situation either.
Yeah.
You know, you got to separate them both, right?
Well, but, you know, if I'm the prosecutor, I think it's relevant.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. But if you were defense, it's something you would challenge, though, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the defense is going to do everything that they can to sort of paint her as, you know, a good student in college, and, you know, being an athlete and so forth.
Yeah, no, I even like so I started my career in a female prison, so I did work around individuals that have did these types of crimes. And, you know, it's can you see the act and the person separately? Like, that's the thing. And usually it's hard to do that, because the act is such a defining thing that it's going to showcase the person in a totally different light. Because I remember you talk to somebody later on, someone will tell you, you know what that person did? What? They killed their kids. Like, whoa. But the person has never been a problem with you, whatever it is. But now that picture automatically defines who you're looking at in front of you. But, you know, could there ever be a moment where the pressure, unfortunately, makes you make a very bad choice that forever labels a good person as a bad person?
Well, there's something that we have called like a critical factor. And so this is something that comes up with hypnosis. People say, I don't want to be hypnotized because I don't want to do something that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing. But there's something that we have within us called a critical factor, which if I hypnotize somebody and I say, okay, I want you to go kill my neighbor, they're not going to do that because their moral compass would not they wouldn't really have it in them, if you will. And people that commit these horrific crimes, actually, they don't have remorse, they don't have guilt. And even though they might be a model citizen in a different arena, doesn't mean that they don't have that capacity to do something that's very violent, very egregious.
Right. And remember, guys, there's no doubt in the fact that she has some involvement in that baby's death, whether it's negligent, whether it's covering it up, or whether she actually did it. So if the prosecutor, if they get evidence that leans towards that she could have killed the baby, then they'll push on, as I said, her history, as you can see by the people she went to school with. But the funny thing is, I have for the defense team something a little different, because the defense team ain't going to deny the fact that she did it. But what I have is, conversely, the defense may emphasize her academic success and clean record. They'll note she was a college senior and accomplished student athlete with no prior trouble, essentially arguing that she wasn't the type to commit a premeditated crime. So they're going to push that this was not planned, that maybe she wanted to have the baby, but at some moment she got flustered, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, she just overreacted. And which, again, I'm not minimizing what she did, just giving you guys a perspective. Granted, you kill a baby, I'm not agreeing with it, but I like to have an objective dialogue here. This is what I find to be where we learn the most. And I said any character witness might describe her as responsible and driven, suggesting the incident was completely out of character and perhaps due to a moment of panic. Would that make sense for an argument?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been on the witness stand more than once, and the questions that I have gotten is, did you know, or should you have known? So maybe she didn't know, but should she have known that this was not the way to, handle this situation? Yes, she should have known. I mean, that's going to be something that'll be a very interesting question, because yes, we panic. Yes, we make bad decisions, but at some point we have to, take responsibility and call the authorities. You see that a lot with hit and run. Right. People will hit somebody and then they take off and then they go, oh my gosh, I need to call, and at least, or they just keep going and hope that they don't get caught.
So let me ask a question, Denise. So, and again, guys, we're trying to be objective just to have a fair view of things, because obviously, again, none of us agree with what happened here. But, so if you got a person that showed on social media to some extent that she was willing to have a family and all this other stuff, because that's what they saw it as a goal. Now, whether that meant in the now or could have meant in the future, who knows? But let's assume it could have meant in the now. I mean, could there have been a chance that somewhere from that moment to when the baby gave birth, something could have happened, a pressure could have happened that could have confused her and she didn't know what to do, and she acted impulsively for an immediate gain, which could have been selfish in nature?
I guess, anything is possible. But the fact that, again, all that she did to try to conceal it and try to get it to go away, I mean, the police apparently found the body in the closet. Right. I mean, at some point, she had the chance of turning this around, or having authorities come in and say, listen, I've done something terrible, or I didn't know what to do, I panicked. But I mean, certainly we don't know all the details, but I mean,
that's spot on, because the remorse was discovered.
Yes.
So technically it's not real remorse. It's either shame or some other BS that really had nothing to do with her wanting to do the right thing for the baby, but rather, in my mind, it could be, hey, I'm going to get caught on this. Mm-hmm. So I just would love to know who made that phone call. I'm assuming, I mean, you're right. Maybe if the time frame is she gave birth that day, and then there's some rumor mill going on, I don't know if it's true or not, that it was a baby that came out like sickly, took its last breath, which still puts her in a lot of trouble because she didn't call for any help. She fell asleep next to it, then eventually woke up, the baby was dead. Then she went through the cleanup and all this other stuff. That to me is where I think they're going to push. But that's to me where in my mind is, like you said, you could have done the right thing. You didn't. Yeah.
You could have turned it around.
Yeah, I think, and I could be wrong, I think she vented to someone. Maybe not so much because she felt guilty for what she did, but maybe because she knew that she could either need help to get away with it or whatever it was, or maybe to convince her what she did was right.
Somebody had some sort of suspicion that something wasn't right, whether it was a neighbor, whether it was a friend, because concealing a pregnancy, and I mean, all of that is really hard to do. And somebody had the courage to call and say, listen, I need, authorities to go out and just check.
I wonder if, I mean, we could be far-fetched, but just out of curiosity, if they ever do a digital forensic, wonder if she called the father.
Don't know.
Maybe
I would hope if she called the father would have expressed some concern and tried to talk her out of. I mean, it appears right now we don't know who the father is, but hopefully, I mean, if somebody else knew about it, you would hope that somebody would step up and do the right thing and say, listen, we got to, put the baby up for adoption, or we got to make some sort of, allowances for this. I mean,
whoever made that call, right? Whoever made that wellness call, that is spot on, Denise. I have so the swift consequences from institute. Okay, so the fact that Snelling dropped out within a week of the incident going public shows the social and professional consequences she already faced. The defense might use this to argue she's already been punished in some way, while the prosecution might use it to illustrate the severity of what happened. Even her school didn't want her representing them after this. I have two questions for you in this section, Denise. As you say, I try to cover a lot, guys, so bear with me, because you never know if you get a chance to revisit it. So how does maintaining a perfect image as a student, athlete, and upbeat social media persona affect decision-making when someone like Laken faces an emotional crisis? Could that pressure make it harder to ask for help?
Well, certainly it seems like she was in the public eye, but we see this with professional athletes and actors and so forth. Again, this is part of what goes hand in hand with being a professional or being somebody in the limelight. I mean, you still have to take responsibility for your choices. I mean, we do as professionals, they have to do it as athletes. I mean, I understand that this was something that maybe she didn't want to happen, but she still needs to take responsibility for it.
Yeah, and you, on the second question, you kind of touched on this, but if someone has personality traits of being very controlling or even having past aggressive behavior, how might that play into the secrecy or denial we see in cases like this? Would you say, like you mentioned before, so now if we're looking a little deeper, the hiding of the baby, could that been a sense to momentarily control what the consequences could be? That's the only thing I could see.
Well, certainly, Anthony, you've been involved with Department of Corrections for a long time. Right. And you know as well as I do how manipulative and crafty and creative they get. And sometimes they're so convincing that you almost like doubt yourself. And that becomes part of the tendencies of somebody with antisocial personality disorder. I mean, they become very good at manipulating and controlling situations.
Right. And I want people to know a lot of our inmates do have antisocial personality disorders, but a lot of them aren't like sociopathic or psychopath. They're just, they do bad things, their behavior, but that doesn't mean they have a mental illness that eliminates all levels of empathy. So I think I've only came across a handful of true psychopathic individuals. Obviously a lot of antisocial.
Well, certainly it's a personality disorder, this antisocial. And what happens is we think of the serial killers. This is antisocial personality. This is where they take it to a point where they do these egregious crimes and they don't feel any remorse. In fact, one of the things that I did when I first was into practice is I did a lot of psychological evaluations for people who have been arrested. And what I was looking for is remorse. Like, I understand, things happen and we make bad decisions and so forth, but did they feel remorse? And if they didn't, I'm looking at this antisocial personality disorder and wondering how severe is it? Is it to the point where they're again being a danger to society? And then in that case, they have to go, into a correctional facility.
Yep. And you know what's funny? We noted that guilt, you need guilt for true remorse. Now, granted, there will be some people that may try to have remorse without the guilt. So let's say in this girl's case, she could try to BS some remorse by saying she feels sad what happened to the baby, but she had to do what she had to do to continue her lifestyle the way it is. That's not true remorse because there's no guilt there. It's just some layered BS with an excuse that she now justified, because I think this is the funny thing too with these type of behaviors is that they start to believe it. And that's when they become extremely dangerous, when that bullshit that I just gave you becomes their belief system, right?
Yep. Yep. And it's all about power and control. It's all about whatever they're doing to serve themselves. That's where it gets dangerous. And you're either with them or against them.
Right. There's no middle ground.
No.
Even an effort to try to help them, you're against them.
Yeah. Well, or they're so manipulative that all of a sudden you can all of a sudden feel like, you're being played.
Yeah, what's
convincing.
And I'm going to tell you something. In corrections, you got to lean on your feelings, because if you don't, most of the time you don't want to act because you feel socially awkward. Who cares? Do what's correct, because in the end, they'll play it out. They'll try to get personal with you. So when you do stand up for yourself, they'll try to get guilt on you, or they'll try to get something to make you stop. No, just say how you feel. I have for the next, I have the legal landscape real quick. So I wanted to read this out, and then I have a few questions here. So we're kind of covering multiple angles here. So it's important to understand that even without a homicide charge, the counts Snelling faces are serious. In Kentucky, both abuse of a corpse and tampering with physical evidence I looked at are Class D felonies, each carrying between 1 to 5 years in prison if convicted. Concealing the birth of an infant is a Class A misdemeanor under Kentucky law, punishable by up to 12 months in jail. Now, guys, that's what I found. If you know more, please add to that. That's just my research. While misdemeanor concealment might seem minor by comparison, taken together, these charges could result in multiple years of incarceration. And critically, authorities have left the door open for additional charges. So we'll see what the outcome is of the autopsy. So if evidence later shows the baby was born alive and died due to foul play, Snelling could face homicide-related charges in the future, negligent charges. There's a whole list of things there. So when Snelling appeared in court on September 2nd, 2025, she entered a plea of not guilty. In cases like this, a not guilty plea at arraignment is standard and can have a few interpretations beyond simply, I didn't do it. It might mean she outright denies the allegation and will face the state to prove its case, which I don't think is the case. I don't think that's why she said not guilty. She admits the basic actions, giving birth and hiding the baby, but will argue she lacked criminal intent due to panic. That's what I'm thinking. Mental disturbance or other mitigating factors. In other words, she may not dispute what happened, but she disputes that it was a crime or the seriousness of the crime under the circumstances. And the defense could be signaling that context and intent are in dispute. For instance, her lawyers might argue the baby was stillborn, not a live birth, and that she did not intend to harm or kill, thus she shouldn't face a homicide charge at all. And they might also explore her mental state, suggesting she was in a psychological crisis or shock affecting her judgment. I mean, before we go into this next, I got to ask you something, Denise. So she did not go to the hospital to give birth. I don't know what happened there. Why not? Again, there's so much here that we have to still wait. But I mean, is there a concern with her, the pain that just going through birth that maybe could affect some level of decision making if the baby was maybe came out a bit sickly but could have been saved, and she just didn't think to do the right thing?
I would say no. I would think that when she had a little bit of pain or there was a problem, like, who wants to go through that alone? I mean, the fact that she didn't make a phone call and get some help.
Is that part of, you think that's part of the cover up too? The fact that she didn't go out and get help, that she gave birth, like that she planned maybe to give birth at home so she could, maybe this was a premeditated thing?
I mean, it's certainly a good question. Yeah, I mean, if she's pregnant, and she's starting to go through labor. I mean, I've had 3 children, so that's not something I would want to go through alone. Right. It's extremely painful, and somebody at some point is going to order a psychological eval on her, and that's going to come into play, and that's going to weigh heavily.
It's a good question to ask, right? Why? So again, if I was looking for some level of premeditation, why not ask? If I was the investigator, hey, why'd you give birth to the baby at home?
Yeah.
Why was this not brought to the attention of medical? And did you have any prenatal checks?
Yeah.
That's another thing. Was there some level of other, my wife, I'm sure you did, you go through the whatever the scheduled checks are when you go through your pregnancy.
Yeah, you take responsibility for it, and you do what's appropriate. What we call in medicine is prudent. Did she get? Obviously she knew she was pregnant.
So that would be a good question. So basically, because that could show intent that she was hiding the birth, which means that could feed into later on when she gave birth, and then the final act would be, and then hiding the baby in the closet, trying to figure out what to do with the baby. So hiding the baby from the very beginning by not getting those medical checkups and definitely not going to the hospital to give birth. That could lean towards the fact that maybe this was all planned out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got to wonder, like, you didn't think anybody would notice.
Yeah, that changes the whole.
Exactly. I mean, like, no one noticed. None of your friends noticed. None of the neighbors noticed. None of your families noticed. The parents, they're in a different state. Maybe they don't see her for a while.
Right.
And, so maybe they don't know as well. But, certainly she's got good friends. She has a social media presence. I mean, a baby's a hard thing to hide.
Right. And I know for a fact, you got a girl like this, once they have a little bump, people notice. They do. Sure. So I got his work noting that a not guilty plea is procedural at this stage. It preserves her rights while the investigation continues. Given the inconclusive autopsy, the defense and prosecution alike are awaiting more information. So, about evidence and all this other stuff. Is there enough evidence? I'm not going to plead guilty. I don't know what evidence is coming up yet. Mm-hmm. And that also is definitely no remorse there. So given the inconclusive autopsy, defense and prosecution alike are awaiting more information. Snelling's legal team may use the uncertainty to their advantage by raising reasonable doubt about intent or even about whether a crime occurred beyond the concealment. And on the other hand, prosecutors emphasize that 2 felonies and a serious misdemeanor are already on the table based on her actions after the birth, regardless of whether the baby was born alive. So I got some translation here. So breaking down Snelling's legal, I like to go into the legal side because, again, if we can't revisit it, we're covering a lot here and we're covering from multiple angles. So something's going to pop up. Breaking down Snelling's legal exposure and what her not guilty plea signifies. So I got multiple felonies. So she's facing 2 felony charges, corpse abuse and evidence tampering. Each could mean 1 to 5 years in prison. So she could be looking at potentially up to 10 years if they did it consecutively. But most of the time, if it's a first offense, they could also run it concurrent. If the sentences are stacked. The concealment birth charge, which is the misdemeanor, might add up to another year. In short, it's not a trivial case. Even without a murder charge, significant prison time is possible if they ran it consecutively. I've seen some people do interviews on this that says if she gets charged with just this, so we're not pushing the homicide, the manslaughter, murder, or even negligence, they'll probably run it concurrent and she'll be out in just over a year. Then you got the not guilty plea could be strategy. Entering a not guilty plea allows for her defense team to gather facts and mount a case. It does not mean that a plea bargain or some other resolution won't happen later. Often in high-profile cases, defendants plead not guilty initially as a matter of course. Then this can change later if, for example, the prosecution offers a lesser charge in exchange for a guilty plea, or if evidence comes out that strongly favors one side. And then the implication of intent and mental state. Expect Snelling's attorneys to focus on her mindset. They may argue she was scared and acted out of panic. So we got to really figure out what happened in that exact moment or leading to that moment if they're going to play that route. Because, again, if she's hiding it the whole time, then you're not going to be able to say anything about your mindset in the moment because, I'm sorry, contextually, you've been hiding it the whole time. But if she's if we're interpreting that people knew she was pregnant, she let people know, she even put her goal was a baby, and then all of a sudden this moment something happens, then maybe something could have triggered because it's a conflict to what you've been doing beforehand. Now all of a sudden this baby that you wanted, so then I would at that point, and we'll get to it, but at that point you look out for external pressure, maybe some dialogue with the boyfriend or maybe some opportunity with the cheer team where this baby could have messed it up. Something in that moment would have mattered, but they'll never get the mental health concern in the moment if everything from this point back was hidden, because hidden to me means you didn't want the baby to begin with.
Yeah, particularly if she kept on, with being an athlete. If you're pregnant and you say on social media you want a baby someday and so forth, and yet you continue to act as do things that are potentially dangerous for somebody who's expecting a baby.
Right. And then it says, okay, so her lawyers may argue she was scared and acted out of panic, not with the cool, calculated intent to break the law. If they claim the baby was stillborn, they can contend she didn't harm the child at all. Instead, her crime was only the improper handling afterwards, stemming from fear, not malice. Kentucky law distinguishes intentional murder from a situation where a distraught mother might conceal a stillbirth, and the defense will likely capitalize on that distinction. And then I got the psychological defense possibilities. It wouldn't be surprising if the defense brings up evidence of Snelling's mental state, perhaps suggesting postpartum mental health issues, denial of pregnancy, sometimes called pregnancy denial syndrome. Oh, that's unique. Because that could be something where if someone does try to pull that, hey, by the way, she knew she was pregnant the whole time, but she never did anything about it. Well, how do you know that? Well, she never went to the doctor point. Well, how do you know she wasn't denying it? What is pregnancy denial syndrome?
Never heard of it.
So you think you think somebody could try to push that? Is that a real thing?
Well, you know, pregnancy denial. I mean, regardless of whether you deny it or not, you give birth to a child, you got to take responsibility for it.
It could, without the name of it, pregnancy denial. I mean, would that be something hypothetically? Let's say someone finds out they're pregnant. Could that be something that maybe, if it's a shock to you, it's a denial in a moment, but at one point, wouldn't it just fade out?
Sure. I mean, it's like any sort of
Don't you go to acceptance at one point?
Yeah, or trauma. I mean, after a while, first, you deny it because you can't really absorb it. And then after a while, you have to take like a death or something like that. You got to take responsibility for it. And you got to go,
so,
okay.
I mean, I would play that out. Well, how long does that last?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's at 9 months and goes into the point where, not only, and you could say that she was fearful, but she's fearful. And then she goes and does something very, she covers up a terrible crime. I mean, to me, it just doesn't add up. I mean, obviously I'm in psychology, so I see trauma, and I was a critical care nurse. I see fear, I see panic, but there at some point you sort of get your wits about you, and if you don't know what to do, you make a call. You call 911.
Everything you're saying is so spot on, Denise, because you know what's funny? So let's say they find out later on that she never went to these doctor's appointments. I think that is going to be a big thing. So if she did, then maybe they can have an argument of something in the moment. But let's say the whole time she's hiding, it doesn't tell anybody, whatever it is. That not just premeditation, but that could also count as cover-up, knowing that she has this whole plan. And part of the cover-up is not exposing to anyone that she's pregnant. Because maybe this whole time she's thinking, I'm going to give birth and I'm just going to get rid of this thing.
And absolutely.
So I have, whatever that denial syndrome was, or other psychological conditions that could have impaired her judgment. While these wouldn't erase the charges, they can influence a jury when evaluating her intent and culpability. Now, I got two questions for you, Denise. When someone in this position pleads not guilty, do you think it's more about them genuinely denying the facts, or could it be more about the panic and pressure they're under? In other words, is a not guilty plea sometimes a way of saying, I'm not a murderer, even if the basic facts are true?
All right. Well, she's 21. She's got no prior record. This has happened. An attorney's coming in, and an attorney, until they see the autopsy and so forth, they're going in with, let's plead not guilty and let's do some investigating. So the fact that they're pleading not guilty is not unusual. But, in order to get representation, they need to come in with some sort of argument. So now we're going to do the investigation, but the investigation for her is not, to me, looking favorable.
Right. And guys, so if you're watching this, these are the discussions that that happen behind the scenes, even with the investigators, the lawyers. They're all trying to get every perspective, because one side is going to see her as innocent, one side is going to see her as guilty, and there's all these perspectives that are that you have to be prepared to challenge against, and ultimately, believe it or not, it is an effort to prove truth, because eventually there's going to be that one last layer. And I think that as dialogues evolve and we're not going repetitive to what we've already discussed, as they keep on evolving, eventually there's that last argument that says, well, makes sense, because they've kind of evolved the dialogue, as opposed to, I usually get people when they become repetitive. Like, we've already talked about that. Now we're here, and then you're bringing it back to here.
Yes.
How might defense teams use mental health or an emotional crisis explanation to help jurors understand or even forgive the choices made in cases like this? Have you seen that approach resonate with juries?
Well, certainly. I mean, that's something that they're going to try to do to get the jury to feel compassion and sympathy for her. So they're going to say, she was fearful, and she's 21, and she's panicking, and hoping that the jury, the members of the jury, are saying, oh, I can understand, and she's so young, and she's got her life ahead of them. I mean, that's something they're going to use to help their case. But I mean, when I was a nurse and people came in with some sort of health crisis, problems have a history. And even in psychology, you have to look at a lot of different factors. You're not just, certainly you have the evidence that we know, but there's also a lot of history behind this that I think, regardless of how it's presented, if somebody's really looking at the whole picture, they've got concerns about this young woman.
Yeah, and guys, I think, I definitely think it's going to play out. I really do. I think that as we move closer to deciding what route they're going to go, they're going to go with that moment. Mm-hmm. So whatever happened in that moment, they're going to go with something that happened in that moment. If I was the prosecutor, I'm looking at what led to that moment. Again, I'm going to bring up the past history if I can to further clarify who this person could be. But that moment is going to be pivotal. Why did you give birth in the house? I think that is one of the most important questions that have to be asked. Mm-hmm. Why did you give birth in the house? Like, why did you not call for help for yourself? Because even if it wasn't for you, for the baby.
Yes. Mine would be, did you know or should you have known?
Yeah. So I love that. So the context of that is basically, did you know or should you have known? So basically what to do, correct?
Right. So let's say you commit a crime, and at some point, maybe you didn't realize that you committed a crime, but should you have known? Like, as drivers, we have certain things that we should know. So if we do something that we shouldn't, that could put our license in jeopardy, we might not have known, but we should have known, because that's part of the responsibilities of being a driver.
And would that be based on a reasonable person's belief that you should have known?
Well, that's sort of, what is the understanding of, you're in the Department of Corrections. So things that, are your responsibility to know, you might not have known at the time, but you should have known when you were sort of commissioned in to be a correctional officer. Okay. This is part of the duties of the job.
I get what you're saying. So again, within the context of what you do, it's hard for you to play ignorance, because you're expected to know these things.
Exactly. The responsibility of doing what's right.
There it is. The moral decision.
The moral responsibility.
At the end of the day, you would figure the life of a baby would be something that you should know what to do, even if it's just calling for help.
Right. Did you know what to do? No. But you should have known that you don't put it in a garbage can, garbage bag. Put it a black bag, whatever, and put it in the closet.
Right.
And that's something you should have known.
And that's something that definitely would be something the prosecutors could exploit.
Yes.
So now this is where the twist comes in. So we're getting through it. So we got the DNA. So we got one development adding complexity to the case is the question of paternity. In early September 2025, Snelling's former boyfriend, Izaiah Hall, so I believe this is Izaiah Hall, voluntarily provided a DNA sample to police to determine if he's the baby's father. Now, people are like, oh my God, why do you? Usually people don't give it that fast. Yes, you do, if you want to maybe really find out or get yourself out of it.
Yes.
If I didn't do nothing wrong, I'll put my name in. If I want to get myself out, I'll give you the DNA. Let's get my role out of this.
Yes. And you want to be cooperative regardless of whether you have anything to do with it or not.
Yeah. Keep it going. Find out what the concern is. Mm-hmm. So he voluntarily provided the DNA sample to police to determine if he's the baby's father. And then you have Izaiah Hall is a 21-year-old quarterback at Cumberland University in Lebanon, Tennessee. Dated Snelling before she entered a relationship with another man, which is Connor Jordan, which is right here. Snelling recent social media post from the summer of 2025 prominently featured Connor Jordan. That's the ones here. A former college basketball player. She and Jordan posted affectionate TikToks together just a couple of months prior to her arrest. Now, these are the pictures that they think that they may have known she was pregnant. They think these are maternity pictures. But, again, that's just people throwing up. And, yeah, I actually kind of believe that a little bit. Mm-hmm. I really do, unless there's a formal event that he went to, or it could be his prom pictures if he's still, or no, he's in college. So I don't know, it could be some formal event that they went to or whatever it was. But
certainly unusual to have professional.
It's very unusual. And they also note that his hands are kind of on her belly in a few of the pictures. So again, I kind of believe that those could be maternity photos, especially that one in the middle right.
Yes.
So again, that could show that she had knowledge that she was pregnant. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, she's showcasing it to the world, so she's not trying to hide it. So then maybe there was something situational, maybe. She and Jordan, and again, not to minimize what she did, just being objective, because obviously I want people to know I'm not condoning it, but if we're trying to figure out what happened here. So she and Jordan posted affectionate TikTok, said that after the infant's death became public, Jordan, him, scrubbed or deleted the social media accounts, and it's unclear if or how he's cooperating with investigators right now. The overlap of two relationships in the months around the pregnancy have inevitably muddled the narrative for both investigators and the public following the case. Like, who's the father? So I got a little bit of these individuals. I was able to find out for Izaiah Hall, that's him. Again, quarterback of Cumberland University, Lebanon, Tennessee. Hill dated Snelling earlier in 2024 prior to her involvement with Jordan. In the wake of the infant's death, Hall has been cooperative with authorities. He voluntarily submitted a DNA sample to Lexington police to help determine paternity. His father told media that police invited Hall to the station. He complied. The DNA test results are pending, but Hall's proactive cooperation suggests he wants to clear up any questions about his role. Exactly what you said, Denise.
Yes.
For Connor Jordan.
If Connor's wise, he'll do it too.
Yeah, so right now, right. So right now, it doesn't look like he is. So former college basketball player, played at King University and Tusculum University in Tennessee, and later at Lincoln Memorial University. Jordan was publicly identified as Snelling's boyfriend in the spring and summer of 2025. He appears in photos and videos on Snelling's social feed, including what looked like a couple's photo shoot in a field in June. And again, June would be the time if. Well, again, you don't know if the baby was full birth. So never mind. Because I'm thinking if August was, let's say, full term, then 6 months is not a bad time to take those pictures because the baby bump starts to show. But again, we don't know if she gave birth to a full term baby. So after Snelling's arrest in August, Jordan swiftly deleted it or deactivated the social media profiles. It's not publicly known when their relationship ended or if Jordan was aware of the pregnancy. Investigators have not named him as a suspect in any wrongdoing, but his relative silence stands in contrast to Hall's openness. So this is where I came into this theory. She's getting ready to give birth. Something may have happened. Maybe she calls him and something happens there, like maybe they're breaking up, and that baby could have been a symbol of them having to stay together. So maybe ending the baby was the best way to fully disconnect the relationship.
Yeah.
Could that be possible? Is that possible? I mean,
hard to know what she was thinking, what kind of logical sense she made out of this. But if I'm Connor's parents, I would really encourage him to be more than cooperative, because
especially right now, right?
And they're going to, and both these kids are going to be, they're going to question them. Did you know she was pregnant? Did you have any idea that she was not going to? What were your plans with the baby, or what were her plans? And,
my question, are you and Jordan still together now?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I wanted to do some difference with their responses real quick. So I had Hall. I thought Hall's decision to willingly provide DNA goes along with you said, Denise, is a DNA sample could indicate he has nothing to hide. As an active college athlete with a reputation to maintain, he likely wants to demonstrate transparency. His cooperation may also stem from a genuine desire to know the truth and distance himself from any suspicion. From a public standpoint, Hall's quick compliance might earn him some credibility. He appears to be doing the right thing without legal compulsion. And you would agree with that 100%?
100%. Excellent.
All right, let's go to Jordan's reticence. All right, so Jordan's wiping of his online presence and lack of public comment may simply reflect legal caution. It's possible he was advised by family or counsel to stay out of the spotlight. If the timeline of the pregnancy overlaps with their relationship, he might also be dealing with personal turmoil or shock. It's important to note that deleting social media doesn't imply guilt, but in the court of public opinion, his silence could raise eyebrows. In contrast to Hall, Jordan hasn't made a public show of cooperation, which means people following the case might unfairly speculate about him. What's your thoughts on that? Is that you believe that?
Well, I imagine that they wanted to delete all social media because, again, now this is an open investigation. So, that doesn't concern me as much. Hopefully, again, his parents are encouraging him to cooperate with the law, to give DNA and to take responsibility and, get ahead of this.
Yeah. And plus, I want to mention something. Again, just trying to stay objective here, but sometimes you got stuff on social media that they're going to dig up and use against you where it really is irrelevant. It's just, I'm going to run with this. What does this mean? The hindsight bias BS.
Yeah. Yes.
So I wanted to add impact on the case here. So for investigators and eventually a jury, the existence of two potential fathers introduced an element of uncertainty. Hall's openness versus Jordan quiet removal could become a subtle narrative. The defense might even use this to create reasonable doubt about motives, suggesting that if paternity was unknown or if Snelling feared one boyfriend's reaction, those factors could have influenced her state of mind. That's why I was mentioning that. Meanwhile, prosecutors will stick to the central fact of Snelling's actions, but they know that jurors will be curious about why she hid the baby, and paternity can be a big piece of that puzzle, or why she decided to have the baby at home. Let's find out who these fathers are, because they could have put pressure. Maybe.
Yeah. Or we don't know what they knew or didn't know, or
what they told her to do.
Exactly. Or how much she confided in them. I imagine if she was with somebody at the time, they knew a lot of what was going on behind closed doors. So, this is just a really tough case.
Well, we're throwing a lot of stuff out there for people. So just, and I have, so to wrap up this, I got, so again, I want to talk about the legal side of this all. So by the way, how I do this is I get the cases, just so people know, and then I get ChatGPT to ask me all these questions. And then I answer about 20 of them over the course of like 2 days. And then I filter it through Claude, and then again through ChatGPT. And then you could see my OCD and all this, because I'm trying to figure out everything. But I like doing this just like you do, Denise. So in terms of legal strategy, paternity and relationships play a role in understanding motive and context. So if the DNA shows one of the men is the father, could shed light on why Snelling felt compelled to hide the baby. For instance, if the father was someone she was no longer dating, I talked about that, like Hall, or someone who would have been embarrassed by a pregnancy, the prosecution might argue she acted to avoid exposing the father or facing his anger. So that's a unique thing, because it's to help someone else technically, but it has nothing to do with the baby who really matters. So it's still a selfish thing, because an effort is to help preserve a relationship that she may see beneficial for probably vanity reasons. So it's not that she's really helping Hall or Jordan or whatever it is, Izaiah or Jordan, but rather the protection of the relationship in regards to how it's seen, the reputation of the relationship.
And a private adoption could have been easily, I mean, that could have happened. That could have happened, and they all could have moved on with their lives. And I mean,
baby would have still been alive if it wasn't a stillborn.
Yes.
So let's see. Who have been embarrassed? Okay, so who have been embarrassed by the pregnancy? The prosecution might argue she acted to avoid exposing the father or facing his anger, and we mentioned that. And conversely, the defense could argue she felt alone and unsupported, which drove her panic. Now that is interesting. Still not an excuse, but it could draw sympathy. If something happened in the moment while she was pregnant, maybe a breakup in the moment or whatever it is, and then she could have acted emotionally towards the breakup. But again, we're really just pulling at straws here, trying to find every objective. So doesn't forgive what she's done, but could be played out if I was the defense team.
Well, certainly the defense attorney is going to try to play that out. But again, some of the steps that she did are sort of the point of no return.
Right.
I mean, even if the baby was born and struggling and she didn't know what to do, I mean, then you would have some compassion. You'd say, she's 21, the baby was born with complications. She panicked. I mean, then we could sort of see that. We could understand that. It's just the other steps are a little bit beyond comprehension.
Right. And then I got, so multiple partners equal reasonable doubt. The involvement of two recent partners could complicate the narrative at trial. It allows the defense to float alternative scenarios, for example, implying uncertainty about who knew what. Might also engender some sympathy. The jury may wonder if Snelling herself was confused or stressed by her personal life. Legally, it doesn't change the charges she faces, but it's part of the story that each side will either emphasize or downplay. And then I have the public perception, which is the last part of this part. Hall's very public cooperation, confirmed through media reports, gives him credibility in the eyes of the public and potential jurors. If he testifies, for example, he may come off as forthcoming and concerned. Jordan's removal from the conversation might leave a lingering question mark. The prosecution likely won't want to focus on Jordan at all, since it's speculative, but the defense might subtly suggest, look, even the potential father, Hall, is on her side cooperating. This was a tragedy, not a crime of malice. They could also point out that no one else is charged, implying that whatever happened, it wasn't a planned conspiracy with a boyfriend or anything of that sort. So it starts to push towards something in the moment. So I have two questions for this segment. Denise, first question is, why might a young woman like Laken not disclose her pregnancy to her partner or family? And what kind of fears or relationship dynamic lead to that secrecy?
Well, certainly, I imagine people would hide a pregnancy because of the shame and the guilt and so forth. The fact that this guy that took these, or the last one that she was with, and they took these professional photos together. I mean, this doesn't even make sense to me. Obviously they seem to be looking like they were delighting into some sort of major event, right. and I'm not really sure. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 in this scenario for me.
Right. I'm thinking that, again, another perspective could be some life change or some opportunity in which the baby then became an obstacle where the relationship became secondary. Well, at least if I want to look at it this way, I would look towards, again, just putting it out there, the more current boyfriend, maybe Jordan, if he is the father, let's say, maybe some opportunity came where the relationship really didn't matter. And now the baby was the only thing that connected. The baby became the obstacle. Can't end the relationship with the baby there.
Yeah.
And the second question, now this is going to go to the men. For the men involved, the potential fathers, what emotional impact might they experience upon learning about the baby's death? How do guys typically cope when faced with something like this, especially if they had no idea it was coming?
Well, this is a tough thing to cope with. I mean, it's one thing to know that you potentially fathered a baby. It's another thing to know what happened to this infant. I mean, it must, I would think that would bring up a lot of emotions and a lot of sadness and remorse. And I can't imagine what they're going through.
Right now, I have no questions here, but I'm just going to speed through this part because people were talking about the autopsy being inconclusive. So I did some research. I know somebody who was able to give me some answers, and then I went ahead and looked up more about this case here. So the Fayette County Coroner's preliminary autopsy. And guys, if you're a doctor, watch this channel, whatever it is, or know more, please add. I'm only going by the information I was able to discern from doing my little research, but I'm not an expert in this area. The Fayette County Coroner's preliminary autopsy was inconclusive. While the infant was confirmed to be male and near full term, that's what they're saying. So near full term. The examination could not yet determine cause of manner of death. Investigators believe the baby was born on August 27th. So that's the day that the police did come to the house, 2025. But the question of whether he was born alive or stillborn remains unanswered. Additional microscopic tissue analysis, toxicology, and other lab studies are now underway. This delay is not unusual in cases involving newborns. Infant autopsies are among the most challenging in forensic medicine. Newborn bodies can decompose rapidly, leaving little clear evidence. If no obvious injuries are present, distinguishing between natural causes like stillbirth, infection, or prematurity and criminal acts like suffocation or neglect becomes extremely difficult. Even suffocation, a common cause in concealed birth cases, often leaves no clear forensic marker. Pathologists must rely on microscopic organ studies, toxicology, and histology to detect subtle clues, such as signs of infection, drug exposure, or whether the lungs ever drew breath. Until those tests are completed, the autopsy remains pending further studies. So what does this mean for legal side? Okay, so here's why the pending autopsy results are so pivotal. No cause of death equals no homicide charge. Prosecutors cannot pursue homicide until science proves proves live birth and criminal causation. Proof of live birth is essential. Evidence like air in the lungs or circulation outside the womb must be shown to prove homicide. Conditions of the body complicates analysis. The baby was found wrapped in a towel and sealed in a trash bag, which may have sped decomposition and obscured signs. And legal patience. Authorities charged what they could: corpse abuse, tampering, concealment, while awaiting final forensic results. Okay, now 2 more sections left. And Denise, you're awesome. And I know you always, I know it's a little lengthy, but the audience here does like the longer shows. So I have 2 more parts left. And I really do take the questions that are being asked from other YouTube channels as I post it, and I try to make a show off of it.
Sure.
So I got the prevention and support systems, which is something that you brought up a lot. So I wanted to add that just in case someone's watching this and they want to know of other alternatives. I wanted to add that to this. I always like to try to help if we could. so we don't repeat this. So cases like this inevitably raise the question, could this have been prevented? Kentucky, like all states, has safe haven laws that allow a parent to surrender a newborn infant safely and anonymously. Under Kentucky's Safe Infant Act, a baby up to 30 days old can be dropped off at a designated safe haven location, such as a hospital, police, or fire station, or even a certain baby box devices with no legal repercussions for the parent, as long as the child hasn't been abused. This law is meant precisely to avoid situations like the one we're discussing by providing a secure and judgment-free option for overwhelmed parents. The University of Kentucky also offers resources from student health services that provide prenatal care and counseling to mental health professionals and confidential support groups on campus. In theory, Snelling had avenues to seek help. And that's where I noticed in your argument, Denise, that's where you tend to, and I agree, become a little bit unforgiving because the baby didn't have to die.
Correct.
If it wasn't a stillborn.
Yeah. But even if it was a stillborn, a call could have been made and it could have been dealt with more appropriately.
So, and 100%, I'm sure we all, I definitely agree with that. And then in practice, however, shame and secrecy often stop people from using these support systems. So if Snelling was indeed hiding her pregnancy, it suggests she felt unable to reach out for help. Perhaps she feared public embarrassment given her role on the cheer team and her public persona, but those pictures could show otherwise. She may not have been aware of the safe haven options, or they may have seemed too drastic or hard to access in her state of mind. It's a tragic reminder that simply having a law or a program isn't enough. People need to feel safe utilizing them. Community education and reducing stigma around unplanned pregnancies are key. Some observers have also pointed out the lack of obvious warning signs in Snelling's case. Even close friends and teammates apparently didn't know she was pregnant, which can happen more often than we think, which, again, we see it now. But the sad thing is we don't know if we see it because we have more information and we see it differently, or would we have really saw this if we saw like this picture? I mean, we know she's pregnant, so we're looking for it and we see it. But what about if we didn't know and someone just showed us this picture?
Yeah, we might not know, but somebody was suspicious.
Somebody was suspicious. And we need to know who that was.
Yeah. And for the person that was suspicious, I imagine there were a lot of people that were also suspicious that did not make the call. Let's just say how it was. And
that would open up too. Right? I've got to find out who knew and could have acted and didn't. And again, even with our hindsight right now, those would we have known that these could be baby pictures or maternity pictures if we didn't think she was pregnant? Could it look like something else, or are we looking at it to kind of self-fulfill that prophecy?
Well, typically people don't have professional pictures made unless there's some sort of an occasion. Yes. An engagement, a baby coming. I mean, usually if you're just dating somebody, you don't go have professional pictures made with them. And thousands of dollars to have these done.
And to be honest with you, the reason why I look at this as a photo like that is because of how he's dressed versus how she is dressed. She's supposed to stand out because she's the mother.
Yeah. Yep.
So he's dressed a little bit more casual, but the light is really supposed to be on her in the white dress. So it's definitely not I wouldn't look at it as a wedding photo. I wouldn't look at it as I look at it something with her. She's the focus in that picture.
Yeah. Yeah. It's some sort of event to portray her. She's very elegant and so forth.
She stands out. Unless that's also part of her vanity too, is hey, you got to dress down so I could stand out. So I got just the legal part. From a legal and policy perspective, what protections and prevention measures exist and why might they fail in cases like this? So I put the safe haven laws. So I looked up Kentucky, but I just put in general safe havens law. But Kentucky's safe haven law, sometimes called the Baby Moses Law or Safe Infants Act, provides a completely legal alternative to abandonment. If Snelling had placed her newborn at a hospital at the fire station, she would not face any charges. The goal of such laws is to prioritize the baby's safety over punishing the parent. Unfortunately, these laws only work if the parent knows about them and is emotionally able to utilize them. So that's your excellent question from before could also relate to this, right? You should have, or so excellent.
Yeah.
And now we may not always assume they know that, but technically they should, but there's a chance they may not.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or they offer counseling on all these campuses. She could have made a phone call and said, listen, I'm pregnant. I may have the baby. What are my options if I choose not to keep the baby?
I mean, right. Is it hard to believe that a 21-year-old in college wouldn't know of a safe haven law? I would have to assume that would have been introduced at somewhere along the line in school.
Well, and I imagine, with all the things that they offer on campus, that's something that's brought to their attention. Like, because I know that, because I see a lot of kids that are all in college. I know that they really sort of, these campuses say, listen, we have counseling for you. We have, they even have things for like drug dependence and alcohol and pregnancy and so forth. I mean, they're geared to help them and support them. They want them to be successful.
Right. And guys, all this would matter is if the baby wasn't stillborn. So again, of course, you could still call to get help, but like for the safe haven stuff, that would be as if the baby was born alive and she killed the baby. So that's where this would really be paramount. Campus and community supports. So at a university like UK, there are health clinics and counseling centers. There are also community organizations like crisis pregnancy centers, social services, et cetera, to help young mothers. Legally and ethically, these institutions encourage seeking help. But again, someone overwhelmed by fear might not tap into these resources. It's not that help wasn't available to Snelling. It's that the barriers of shame likely kept her from accessing it. Now, granted, let me ask you a question about that real quick, Denise. Could there be a chance that a narcissist, it could be her, let's say that is the case, when something like this happens, could their image, I know you said there's a spectrum, but could it ever just drop so much that they do take this as they do wind up, let's say, killing the baby, because there is no middle ground here? It's either I'm at this level or I'm not.
Right. Or their narcissism becomes so apparent that the decisions that they make are truly self-centered and for their own gain. Whatever she had to do to sort of get this taken care of in a healthy and legal way, she just didn't do it. She would rather just sort of, I guess, take matters into her own hands. And that goes way beyond narcissism, though. That goes right into antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah, because your value of self is so great that it diminishes the value of others.
Yeah, and there's so many cases that we're seeing of this now, where people do these egregious things, and so they get some power and control, and they'll do whatever they got to do to keep that, legal or illegal.
And we've been covering a lot of that on this channel, actually. I'm definitely having you come on more often. So I got the stigma and awareness. The big lesson here is the role of stigma. The law can offer immunity, as safe haven laws do, and support centers can offer confidentiality. But if a young woman feels like no one can ever know I was pregnant, she might not care about the legal protections. This is still selfish in nature, guys. I want people to know that. She's trying to avoid the social fallout. Communities might take this as a call to double down on education. Do people on campus know about safe haven options? Do they feel confident that if they seek help for an unwanted pregnancy, they won't be shunned or judged? And it was unwanted. We don't know that. That's still up for discussion. And reducing the stigma could in the future literally save lives by encouraging someone in Snelling's shoes to choose a safer legal alternative. So I got two more questions before the last section. So for this question, what warning signs, if any, should friends and family look for if they suspect someone might be concealing a pregnancy? Are there red flags or changes in behavior that loved ones can pick up on?
Well, certainly. I mean, there's change of behavior. There's obviously change of body shape and so forth. I'm thankful that most young women, though, will take responsibility early on. They miss the menstrual cycle and they'll get tested and they decide what they want to do. I mean, this case, although it's shocking and so forth, it's very unusual and very atypical. And I'm happy to say that.
All right, and I have for the second question, what support systems or messages do young women need to feel safe seeking help in a situation like this? For example, how can universities and communities better communicate that options like counseling, medical care, and safe surrender are available and judgment-free? I think it's definitely about confidentiality, but what else?
Yeah, well, and I was going to say, from what I've seen, all these campuses and universities, they go above and beyond. Again, when they accept these students in, they want them to be successful. They want to provide everything that they could possibly need so that they graduate and they go on and do wonderful things, which is a reflection of the campus. So they're offering the fact that people or that students aren't taking advantage. That's something that they decide. but it's not because the universities are falling behind on that.
And then now I got the final part here, just kind of like a wrap up. So let's just go over what we did. I got 2 more questions for you, Denise. So as of now, Laken Snelling is no longer enrolled at University of Kentucky, remains confined under house arrest at her parents' home in Tennessee. Notably, she's not being monitored by an electronic ankle bracelet. Instead, her movements are restricted by the honor system and periodic check-ins per her bond agreement. The legal road ahead will be determined largely by the pending forensic results. The next scheduled step is the preliminary hearing on September 26, 2025, which I'm going to assume we'll have updates along that time. And me and Denise then will go ahead and maybe revisit this topic with more of a directed dialogue, because now we have more. Right now, we're just kind of giving all angles out, but I'm definitely thinking they did the 26th, which will allow for autopsies and stuff to get finished up. And then when we get another update, me and Denise will keep a look for it, and then we'll go ahead and now direct our dialogue towards where the updates are heading. At that hearing, a judge will review whether there's a probable cause to send the case to a grand jury. If the evidence, even just the evidence of the concealment and corpse abuse, is strong, the case will likely be forwarded to Fayette County grand jury for potential indictment on those charges and possibly additional ones if new evidence has come in by that time. So beyond the courtroom, the community and those involved are grappling with difficult questions. How could this have happened? It's a question we ask in nearly every case of neonatal, it's called neonatal or concealed birth. People who knew Snelling are struggling to reconcile this smiling college cheerleader they thought they knew with the young woman now at the center of this tragedy. There's also a collective urge to ensure this never happens again, which brings up conversations about education, access to birth control and prenatal care, mental health support, and the aforementioned safe haven laws. No matter the legal outcome, the case has already spurred discussions in Kentucky and beyond about how to identify and help at-risk pregnant young women before it's too late. So let me do the legal transition like we did for the other ones. Here's what to watch out as the case progresses in the coming weeks and months. And this probably be depending on what the updates will be, where we will probably be focusing our discussion. So university fallout, Snelling's swift withdrawal from UK underscores the immediate social consequences she faced. University of Kentucky acted within days, which is standard when a student is charged with a serious crime. This has likely further isolated Snelling, who is now back in her hometown environment. How she conducts herself on house arrest and whether she abides strictly by the rules could influence a judge's willingness to continue her bond or potentially tighten conditions. The forensic updates, the final autopsy reports, and any additional forensic evidence will be crucial. If, for example, a medical examiner concludes the baby was alive and perhaps injured, the Commonwealth attorney prosecutor could seek an indictment for homicide. On the other hand, if the cause of death remains unknown or consistent with stillbirth, prosecutors might stick with the current charges or consider a plea deal. The timeline for these results isn't exact, but a few weeks was mentioned as a rough estimate. We could see developments by later in the fall. So preliminary hearing and beyond. At the September 26th preliminary hearing, we may learn new details as police often summarize the evidence to date. If the case proceeds, a grand jury would likely convene to indict on formal charges. After indictment, the case would move to circuit court for trial unless a plea agreement is reached. Given the sensitive nature, both sides might engage in negotiations behind the scenes. The prosecution will be careful. They know public scrutiny is high, and any decision whether to add charges or not will be second-guessed. The defense will weigh the risk of trial and possibly worse charges against any plea offers. And I think that's smart from them because they know that, hey, if we could get this plea and they could do this, maybe we should just accept the plea.
I agree.
And as I said, she may not be afraid to plead guilty, but it's a conditional plea of guilty, technically. What are the conditions that made you commit to this? That's what it would be. And then I got last part before your 2 questions is this case has attracted national attention that can subtly influence decisions. Prosecutors in high-profile cases sometimes feel pressure not to go easy for fear or of public backlash. Conversely, if an evidence for murder charge is borderline, they might be cautious about bringing it to avoid a high-profile acquittal. And that's makes sense too. Like, it's not enough. I don't want to lose the case either.
Yeah.
And look like a fool. So the court of public opinion is not the court of law, but in the background of every move, officials are aware of community sentiment. That's me always talking about. I had to add that in, public pressure and how it gets people to look at things differently.
Yeah, this is something that the public will weigh in. They will want this, buttoned up.
Yeah, and the public's not going to want an excuse for her behavior. They want a justification.
Correct.
And it's probably not going to come based on anything related to vanity.
Yes.
So far, much of that sentiment is of shock and sadness and desire for answers. Last two questions, Denise, and I thought this was a great show. First question, it's more related to the community, but how does a community begin to process and heal after a tragedy like this? What can be done to channel the anger or grief into something positive, like awareness or prevention efforts, rather than merely sensationalizing the tragedy?
I feel like lately we've seen a lot of these things. We've seen a lot of these either mass shootings or, I mean, it seems like we go from one thing, we had the flooding in Texas. And although these situations are really tough and I think really difficult to deal with, one of the things that sort of gives me hope is a lot of times it brings people together. And it, like in this situation, we needed to bring some awareness to this. Like this could happen. I mean, this happened, just recently. And what do we need to do? Like, how can we be better? How can we prevent more? How can we learn? How can we grow? And how can we sort of connect together to make sure that these instances don't happen again and again and again?
Yeah, and the first thing I think we should do, to be honest with you, if we're going to make some changes on this, is give the baby a name.
Yeah.
Identify the victim. The baby was a living thing. Either way, even if it was stillborn, it had it's life.
Yeah.
So,
and people can create a movement.
Create a movement. I mean, they're doing it for the Emmanuel Harrow case too.
Yes. Yeah. And so there's always a way that you can bring some hope to tragedy. Yeah,
and then hopefully, the baby doesn't die in vain.
Yes.
There's a greater purpose.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with that, Denise. Well said on that. And then last question I have for you is, what lessons should families, schools, and peers take away from the case, from this case, to prevent something similar from happening in the future? For instance, how can we create environments where someone in Laken's situation feels safe, seeking help rather than hiding in fear? And again, guys, it's a perspective we're providing, because what I don't like is when everybody does this narrative to paint the person as evil, and then all of a sudden there's a shift in the dialogue, a shift in the narrative, and the same people that painted that crappy picture will think it's okay just to say the one apology and then it doesn't work that way. I think we should be fair and objective, which we did. I think we kind of balanced out the dialogue. But for someone like Laken in that position, let's just treat her maybe for this scenario as someone that could have been a victim to circumstance, a victim to pressure, a victim to being confused about what's happening. What could we do for them?
Well, and what we can do, and let's just, we have to sort of see how this situation plays out, but we can learn from it. If this was something that she did because she panicked and was fearful, how can we educate people? How can we prevent this from happening again and again and again? And if this is something that she needs to take responsibility for, then let's see how that plays out. Because, at one point or another, we've got to learn from this.
Yeah. And now that's a dialogue, guys, that we had. And again, it's just an effort to show you many perspectives. And I think me and Denise will keep up with the updates. And I think I'll stick with Denise on covering this again. If there's updates that give us a chance to follow a more defined path, because then what we'll do is, once we know where that direction's going, then I think we can focus more of a discussion that's a little bit less ambiguous. But I actually think this really wasn't that ambiguous. It's just a lot in a lot of different directions.
It's a lot of speculation at this point.
Yeah, but that's where we should be, though. I mean, you got a lot of people already assuming routes, and we gave both routes.
Yes.
Probably helping the prosecutor and the defense side at this point. Hey, Denise, I know you got some stuff you're working on. I see you got some podcasts going out there. So in closing, what do you got? Let's give out first off, let me put your email in case anybody wants to email you. What's your email?
It's Denise.Schonwald.
SCHONWALD, right?
At gmail.com. My website will also let viewers know what I'm up to. I have about, a dozen, if not 15 podcasts on there. I've authored 5 books. So and anything you want to know about me, you can look it up online, of course.
Well, let's get some of those book names, because this audience here loves to read. So what are some of the books and what are they about?
I think the most appropriate book for our topic today is Elephants Don't Marry Giraffes. It's a book about relationships. But people can check out my books. Certainly email me. I mail out copies all the time.
Now, if they want to find your website, they just put in your name, and then what's your website? What's the
DeniseSchonwald.com.
Okay, perfect. And are you also on any other social media platforms in case they want to message you?
Everything, YouTube, LinkedIn.
Which one's the best one to reach you at? Facebook, LinkedIn, or?
Yeah, Facebook. Absolutely. Fortunately, I don't think anybody in the world has my name. So if you type in my name, you'll find me.
Schonwald.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you something. I love having these. We should do it really more often. I don't know. You're so busy doing good things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to catch up to you a little bit. So
yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Always an honor.
If anyone deserves, it's you. You are extremely, and you listen, guys. In case you don't know, I know her from beforehand because she was giving me insight in how to help correctional officers find a better way to handle stress, anxiety. I mean, this is someone that came through for us at our darkest of times during the COVID time. So, I mean, it's great to know that you're able to take that talent and skill, your love for what you do, and then go ahead and branch off into other areas that help you get the bigger impact, because that's what it's about. It's not so much about bringing something for yourself, but rather I need a higher venue because I know I have a voice. And sometimes, guys, when you have that voice and you see someone else saying the message that you know you could do better, you better get off your ass, do what you can, and become that voice, because there's no excuse, because then you're allowing the world to receive subpar stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's what Denise did. She didn't want the world to get subpar stuff.
Yes.
I love having you, Denise.
Thank you. And in closing, what I do want to say is the real hero here was the person that made that phone call. So yes. It took a lot of courage, and I think that we really need to acknowledge that person.
So Denise, I'm going to keep up with this case, and I know you will. So if we see updates, let's keep on, and then let's find out when we have, because sometimes even the littlest of updates is worth exploring. So I can maybe do like a quick little short, let the people know we're going to focus on this tonight, and we'll go on, because the thing about what we're doing now is you got to get on it right away. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, the message gets bastardized, or you want to get out there right away. So I will keep track of it. If there's something pops up, me and you will find a few minutes, and then maybe in the process start developing what direction we were going to plan on going, depending on what the information is.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
All right. Thank you, Denise. As always, guys, stay safe, Tear Talk, and please subscribe. Share the content. Share it, because YouTube doesn't. So share it. As always, guys, stay safe.